welcome back. Another video. This time we're talking about safer sleeping for your babies. This is never an easy topic to start to talk about, because what we're really talking about here is preventing sudden infant death. So it's never an easy topic to start to discuss. Everything that I'm going to tell you about today comes from the Lullaby Trust, which is a great organisation, a fabulous organisation, research-based, that's a charity that's been going for many years. It was brought, I think, more to the public attention back in 1991 when Anne Diamond, who was a television presenter at the time, her son Sebastian died at 4 months old of unexplained sudden infant death. So with her sort of celebrity status, she was able to really raise the profile of the charity, and it became much more widely known about. They introduced a new campaign which was Back to Sleep, which was all about putting the babies on their backs to sleep. And since that campaign came into being, there's been a 75% decrease in sudden infant death. So that's absolutely amazing. You may have heard of the Lullaby Trust, or you may have heard of it as SIDS, so the Foundation of Sudden Infant Death, because it was known as SIDS up until a few years ago when they changed the name to the Lullaby Trust. The reason they changed the name was because people got very good and they were doing really well with following the guidance from SIDS, but people were often thinking that it was all about where the baby slept at night, safer sleep at night time, but actually it's about every sleep being a safe sleep. So that's why they changed the name to the Lullaby Trust, because lullaby implies every sleep. So it's about every sleep being a safe sleep. So all the information comes from, as I say, that I'm going to give you, comes from the Lullaby Trust, and they have lots and lots of handouts that you can download on lots of topics, some of them that we'll discuss in this session now. A particularly useful handout that's only been out a little while now, is this product guide. I really like this because this sort of goes through, because as you know, when with pregnant families, you often are seduced by marketing. You need this for your baby, you need that for your baby, you need this, you need that. Whereas actually the Lullaby Trust is really good at helping you sort of sort out what you really need and what you don't need, and what's probably not the best thing to buy. Yeah, so this is a really good sort of guide to look at, as well as there are other handouts that they have. And also, incidentally, when the baby is born, there's an app that comes from the Lullaby Trust too that's really quite useful for looking at if you're concerned about the baby for anything, it sort of has a series of questions that are like little triggers. Do I need to do something about this? What should I do? So they are a really useful resource, and all the information that I'm going to give you comes from them. So the guidance, it's very straightforward. It's common sense, really. And as I start to sort of say things, you'll think, yeah, that makes sense. And it's quite easy to follow. And if you follow this guidance, then actually you can just sit back and enjoy your baby and know that you're doing everything that you could possibly do. So the first thing that I would say is the Lullaby Trust recommend that you have the babies with you 24 hours a day. So obviously that doesn't mean you need to take them into the toilet with you when you go to the toilet, but it means that you don't leave them upstairs in the nursery or in their bedrooms or in your bedroom while you're downstairs, yeah? Because the reason they should be with you is twofold, really. It's partly because they hear you breathing or snoring, whatever you're doing, depending where you are, yeah? And that's really reassuring for them, and to hear the sounds. But also, when they're with you, if you're at a comfortable temperature, then they're most likely to be at a comfortable temperature as well. If they're up in the nursery, even if you've got one of those egg things that's telling you what the temperature is, it's only as good as if you're in there looking at it. So if the babies are with you and you feel comfortable, then there's a good chance that they're going to feel comfortable too. Yeah. As a general rule of thumb, babies need one extra layer of bedding or clothing than you have yourself. Yeah, just one extra layer, because they're not moving about so much. How can you tell if your baby's the right temperature? How can you tell if your baby's comfortable? Feel the baby's tummy, feel their back, feel their chest. so their chest, their tummy, their back, and then feel those same places on you. And if you feel comfortable, and you feel the same sort of temperature as them, then there's a good chance they're going to feel comfortable too. So checking their they're a good temperature, but as a general rule of thumb, one extra layer of bedding or clothing than you have yourself. So initially, perhaps when your baby's are first born, you might be using these blankets with the little holes in, and no matter which ones you buy, they always tend to be a bit on the big side. So I said one extra layer of bedding or clothing than you've got yourself is a sort of general guidance. But actually, if you go to put one of these on your baby's crib or on your baby's Moses basket, there's a really good chance it's going to be too big. So you're going to fold it, aren't you? So what, you're saying, oh, it's only one blanket, but it's now, if you can see from this, it's become 4 layers. So it's about the amount of layers, not the amount of blankets. Yeah, so it's the bedding is really important. We're going to discuss that a little bit more in a moment. But let's start off by thinking. If I was to say to you about what you already probably know about the Lullaby Trust, what you already know about safer sleeping, I'm sure that you're probably already aware that you should have the baby at the foot of the cot and they should be on their backs. Yeah, the reason the babies should be with their feet to the foot of the cot is because then they can't slither down underneath the blankets and overheat. So if they were further up the bed, remember I said in a previous video, when I'm talking about the bathroom, there was gravitate to something solid, yeah? So actually, if their feet are already at the bottom of the cot, then they can't slither down anymore and overheat. Also, when you've got the blankets over them, it shouldn't be any higher than sort of like their breastbone here, and those blankets should be well tucked in, yeah? So that's the first thing that I would say. And also, when you're thinking about that, so they should be on their backs. That's so they don't slither down and go underneath the blankets and overheat. But also, they should be at their feet with their foot at the cot, but also they should be on their backs. The reason they should be on their backs is because you don't want them to, if they're on their sides, they can roll onto their tummies and again overheat. Yeah. So actually, if you've got your baby on its side, it can roll onto the tummy and overheat. Whereas if it's on its back, it's going to hopefully stay on its back. People say, oh, well, what happens if the baby's a bit mucousy, if the baby's a bit sick, and it's on its back, it might choke. But actually, babies are very, very good at going from side to side. Many time on the postnatal ward, I've gone to pick up a baby, and as I've gone to pick them up, I've got, some dribble on my fingers, yeah? Where the babies, you didn't notice it, you didn't know it was there as you picked them up. They've just done this, or, from one side to the other, and they've freely been able to sort of spit it out their mouths, yeah? Whereas, so that's why, having them on their backs is absolutely fine to do. And that's why when we have them in the cots, they should be with their feet to the foot of the cot on their back in a clean, flat surface. So that means when they're in that cot or that Moses basket, there should be just a sheet underneath. There should be no pillow, yeah? Because if you've got a pillow that holds the baby's head up, the babies, that means their heads, when they're first born, their heads are often, kind of a little bit elongated there at the back. And if they're resting on a pillow, it makes them force their chin around, which of course is not good for the airway. It can obstruct the airway. So for the first year of their life, the recommendation is that they don't have a pillow. So they should be on a clean, flat surface. So that's a sheet. Not a one of those fleecy blankets or anything like that, just to make it nice and soft. No, just a clean, flat, just surface that's uncluttered. So no teddy bears around and about, just that clean, flat surface. That also means no bumpers around the side, which can also make them hotter as well. So clean, flat surface. And that's another thing just to mention with the product guide, when they're talking about things that you should buy and you shouldn't buy, there's lots of thoughts out there on these, the sleeping pods. And again, you see sometimes on the telly celebrities, you know, there with their babies in the sleeping pods, and that's again something that's not really recommended by the Lullaby Trust, because they're almost like you know, almost like a little cat or dog bed really. They're kind of made of memory foam and things that are going to the baby sink into, so that's not ideal. It's not a clean flat surface, and also because of what it's made of, it can make it a little bit hotter, and also because there's sort of like the barriers then around the side of the baby's head, it means if the babies are sick or they are a bit spitty, then it's much harder for them to do this and this, because they're confined in a space. So the mantra is for safer sleeping for your baby, to have the baby on a clean flat surface. So that's that mattress with just a sheet over it, and your baby laying on its back with its feet to the foot of the cot. And you know, if you're using blankets, have them well tucked in and up to the breastbone only. Now some people will use these GrowBacks. Now the Lullaby Trust will say that that's absolutely fine for you to use these from birth for your babies, as long as they're the right TOG rating and they're also the right size for your baby. Yeah. So actually, if you buy one and you can't see what TOG rating it is, or you're given one by you know, a friend or family, and you can't see what TOG rating it is, tucked inside with the washing instructions will usually say the TOG rating. It's not like we know with duvets, you know, in the sort of summertime and the wintertime TOG, the 4 or the 10.5 or whatever. It's a very different sort of a number, but it will still say whether it's a summertime or a wintertime TOG. So the most important thing is that it's the right thickness, the right TOG, and also that it fits well. Now, if you can see from this one says it's 0 to 6 months, yeah, and various. You have to have a look at them really, because I've got other ones that I use to demonstrate at a couple of the children's centres that are actually smaller, but they still say the same size, yeah. So how big it is down here doesn't really matter. What really matters when you're getting the right size is that the baby's head is too big to slide through here. So what you don't want is the baby's head to be able to slide through there, yeah? So the baby's head's got to be bigger than this bit here. And some of them you'll find have got like little poppers at the side that will help them to sort of make them a little bit smaller here. So this is the bits that you want to fit. And also, as you can see with this one, it's got 2 poppers. Now that's really good to have 2 poppers on the shoulders each side, because what that means is if one popper was to pop open, you've still got the other one there that's hopefully going to keep it from you know, sort of making it unsafe for the baby to use. So getting the size right is really important with these, and the TOG rating. So it doesn't matter when you use a GrowBag. So when we're talking about using blankets, we talked about the baby having its feet to the foot of the cot, being on its back. When you use a GrowBag, although the baby must still be on its back, of course, its feet don't need to be at the foot of the cot, because of course if its feet's at the foot of the cot, with a GrowBag, what are you going to do with all of this? Yeah, it's just going to make the baby hotter in some way or another. So when you're using a GrowBag, you don't need to use blankets as well. This was intended for babies that kick their bedding off. Yeah, so that was what it was invented for. So this is instead of blankets and sheets. Yeah, when I said blankets, that's for sure. You obviously have a sheet on top of the mattress and then this on top. But although the babies need to be on their backs, they don't need to be at the foot of the cot. In fact, it's a nuisance if they do because of this. But it doesn't matter them not being at the foot of the cot with a GrowBag, because they can't, then they're not going to slither down inside of this if this is fitting well and overheat. So these are really useful bits of kit, especially, you know, if you were using a travel cot or something like that, because, or, you know, if the baby was sleeping in the daytime, because it's easy to put them in it, and you know that they're in a safe space in them. So the GrowBags are nice. Now also the Lullaby Trust do recommend, if I show you this picture. Now there's a couple of things I want to show you on this picture, because some people talk about swaddling their babies, yeah? So swaddling your baby is really wrapping the baby up. Now, the Lullaby Trust would say it would not be ideal to do this with a blanket. If you see me do this with a blanket, it's really wrapping the baby up, because they're used to being in a nice, warm, tight space inside of you. So sometimes when they come out into the world, when there's a lot of freedom, they don't like it. So to be snuggled up can be a really good way to settle them, yeah? But if you're using blankets, can you see how many layers of thick blanket I've got here? And we're thinking about not overheating your babies, yeah? Because that's a real key factor for for sudden infant death, yeah? So we don't want to overheat them. Obviously, on the other hand, we don't want them to make them so cold that they're shivering, yeah? But, that's what I said about, checking the right temperature. But you don't want to overheat them. So the Lullaby Trust would say, you could use, instead of using a blanket, why not use a muslin, yeah? So a muslin would be really good because it's a lot thinner, just to wrap your baby up, to give it that feeling of security, of being wrapped up nice and snugly. But you might say you might need a degree in origami to be able to fold this muslin into a good position. Also, may I say that you should never, come on baby, excuse me a minute, you should never go over the baby's head and do it this way, yeah? It's not Christmas, yeah? So you don't wrap your baby up like that. When you do a swaddle, it starts from the shoulder and down, yeah? So that's a good way to do that swaddle around and down. Sorry, it's difficult to show you this in here in the position that we're in so far. But what lots of people do like, and this is currently quite popular, they're called Grow Snugs. I don't know if you can see this. So you can see this baby in this Grow Snug. So it's a little bit like the Grow Bag that we saw just now. But I don't know if you can see at the top there, their little arms are tucked away. So it's almost like a swaddle. But then when the babies are asleep, when you've settled them, what you then might choose to do is undo. So because at the top here, these little bits here, they're poppers. So then when they're asleep, you could undo it, and then it turns into a little grow bag, really, yeah? So these, you can see these are on the Lullaby Trust website. Can you also notice, that little baby there in its little basket, it looks like a little linen basket, doesn't it? But it's got absolutely nothing cluttered around it. It's just the baby with its mattress, no teddy bears, no bumpers, nothing like that. So it's uncluttered, it's safe, it's a good clean flat surface for your baby. And here in the cot you can see just the same. So then that's the some of the bedding things that I would just like to show you there. So with the Lullaby Trust, they're saying that the safest place is to have the baby on its back with its feet to the foot of the cot. What I would just like to show you now is this little picture that the Lullaby Trust use, just to show you, there's 8 things wrong with this room. Yeah, so what you can see, building on what we've already talked about, what you can see there is that the baby is in the cot, and it should have its feet to the foot of the cot, and it's not. It's quite near the top, and it's on its side, and it should be on its back. The baby is wearing a hat, and there's no need for the baby to have a hat on in bed or in the house at all. What you can also see is that there's a pillow. We've already discussed that the baby should be on a clean flat surface, and the bumpers around the outside are not advised either. So the baby is also underneath the radiator, and we don't know, I suppose, whether that radiator is on, but for the principle of the picture and things being wrong, I'm going to assume that probably that picture, that the radiator is on. So it's also by the window. It's okay to be by the window if the, you know, as long as the baby's in a, you know, in a draft or in direct sunlight. Yeah. So also, with the summer coming, the Lullaby Trust do say, you know, because people say, is it okay to use a fan in the rooms if it gets hot? Yes, it is okay to use a fan in your rooms with where you are with your baby, but just be very mindful of not having it sort of blurting at the baby. Those ones on the taller stick that sort of turn and oscillate are the type they recommend. And possibly the thing that I should have shown you right at the beginning that was wrong with this room is that the baby is in the room. One, it's in the room by itself, and we said they should always be with, you know, with you at all times. But also the door is shut. Now the Lullaby Trust would say that sometimes when you know, as the babies get a little bit bigger and perhaps there isn't room in your bedroom, there would be hopefully for a Moses basket, but by the time the babies get a bit bigger and perhaps need to be in a cot, if there isn't enough space for a cot in your room, then there should be a room in a room adjacent to you, so that it's the same sunrise and sunset, so it you know, it's the same sort of temperature. That's not always possible for people because sometimes that would be your bathroom. Yeah, so it doesn't always work. But what you certainly should have, if they are in another room from you, is have that door open. So that's the main things that are wrong with that picture, and also the baby not having a dummy. Hold that thought. I'll come to that in a second, because what I've got here is the picture of the ideal position. Yeah, so here's mum in bed alongside the baby. I'll just take the dummy there for a second, inside the, you know, the room with the baby, and the baby's at the foot of the cot on its back. And what I also want to point out to you here, what I would just like to also add to this, is that in the ideal world, we all know that in the ideal world that you know, you would feed the baby and, you know, and then put the baby back in the Moses basket, back in the cot. Obviously in the daytime when you're awake, you're going to be, you know, spending a lot of time, of course, cuddling your baby, spending time with your baby, looking at your baby. You can waste hours. It's not a waste at all. I shouldn't say that. It's not a waste, because it's fabulous to be cuddling your baby, getting to know your baby. But when you're really tired, it's best to put the baby down. Yeah, we know that. So at night time, you could see in this picture here, the cot was alongside of the bed. So that's the perfect position for it to be in. If there wasn't space here, then that cot could have been at the bottom of the bed here. So that would mean if mum was formula feeding, there wouldn't be really any reason for her to bring the baby into bed with her. But if she was breastfeeding, then actually, do you know, towards the end of a feed, you let down a hormone that makes you feel really sleepy, and so does the baby. So that's kind of handy, because you get good at feeding and sleeping and feeding and sleeping. But it does mean that sometimes, with all the best intentions in the world, you are going to fall asleep with the baby, you know, in the bed with you. So the Lullaby Trust last year were really mindful of this and put this poster out, sort of like to just sort of speak about this. When you do bring the baby in to feed with you, always never put the baby in the bed with you, yeah, underneath your duvet. So the baby should always be on your side, not between you and your partner, because it's hotter there, of course, yeah. So they should always be on your side. So you bring them in and put them on your side. So you would turn the duvet down so it was not over the baby, and use their own bedding with them like that, or perhaps, you know, you would turn the bedding down so it wasn't over you as well, so that you wouldn't maybe drop off into such a big sleep after you'd finished feeding. Yeah, if the cot can't be here and it's at the bottom of the bed instead, then it would be good to have a chair here so that the baby couldn't roll out and be hurt. Yeah, but the idea is that, you know, in the ideal world, of course, you put the baby back, but you know, sometimes you may fall asleep while you're feeding your baby. So what you want to do is make it that safest place that you possibly can for every feed and for every sleep, so that it can be the safest that it possibly can. Because, of course, the alternative might be that you might say, oh, you know, I don't want to fall asleep with the baby, so you get up. And then what happens is you might sit on a rocking chair, you might sit on the sofa, and of course you're going to be really tired, and then you might fall asleep with the baby with you like that. And remember what we said earlier, that babies get hotter when they're on their tummies, so that's not a good position for the baby to be in at all. So in the ideal world, you would feed the baby and put them back in their cribs to sleep. But, you know, the safest place, just in case they fall asleep, is, you know, or you fall asleep while you're feeding, is like that. Now, I mentioned just earlier, I mentioned about the dummy. And the dummy is just, if I just put it there with my little baby here, put the dummy in its mouth. Dummies are recommended by the Lullaby Trust. Because there's been lots of research, lots of local and national research and worldwide research that says that, you know, giving a dummy to the baby when they, just as they're dropping off to sleep, helps them to remind them to keep swallowing and helps to keep the airway open. So it's not supposed to be used as a tool for, you know, a plug for a crying baby. It's intended to be used as a sort of an aid memoir to sleeping. So as the baby is just dropping off to sleep, it begins to make the association when it drops off to sleep. It uses the dummy and it helps to keep the airway open, yeah? And so as the baby's waking up, you take it away. And the idea is that you offer it with each sleep. And then when the baby gets to about 6 months, get rid of it. Good luck with that. Also, to start at the beginning, may I just say that if you are a breastfeeding mum, the recommendation is that you don't start using the dummy for, you know, to aid, you know, to remind them to keep swallowing with each sleep until the baby is about a month old, because it's a very different action to that of when the babies are breastfeeding. And you know, breastfeeding also reduces the risk of sudden infant death, so therefore we want to get that breastfeeding established before you start introducing the dummy. I hope all that makes sense. And we've spent a long time on safer sleeping, so I think I will probably stop there.